Hello, friends. Today I'm going to give you a little bit of history about a song called Waltzing Matilda. Waltzing Matilda is an Australian song that's been sung for many, many, many years. And in fact, it's so important to Australian people that they thought about making it their national anthem. It has been important for social revolutions where workers were able to fight to get better money for themselves so that they could have better things and get what they needed. I'm also going to give you some vocabulary to help you understand what some of the strange words in this Australian song mean. In order to understand the song Waltzing Matilda, first we have to understand that sheep are very important to the Australians. Sheep raising is a big industry. Sheep are raised so that their wool can be cut off and made into items. This is a map of Australia showing all the areas where sheep are raised. Darker green areas mean more sheep are there. That's most of Australia, covered in green. That means that a lot of sheep are raised in Australia. That's a big business for a lot of Australians. When a sheep's wool is cut off, it is called shearing. It does not hurt the sheep. The sheep on the left has not been sheared, and the sheep on the right has. When the farmers take off the wool, they put it in large bags, which they then load up on a truck to be sent to a factory to be made into thread. At the factory, the wool gets stretched and pulled and tightened into thread to make garments. Wool can be made into sweaters or socks or sleeping bags or coats. It can even be made into diaper covers because it's so good at keeping out moisture. Shearing sheep has been done in Australia for hundreds of years. These pictures are from the 1800s. In the song Waltzing Matilda, we are introduced to a character called the Swag Man. The Swag Man is someone who wanders all around with no particular home, no house, just traveling from place to place. The Swag Man carries a pack on his back called a swag or a Matilda. It can be called either one, and that's where he rolls up his items and carries them on his back. In this art sketch of a swag man by Tom Carr, we see a wanderer carrying his Matilda on his back. In the song Waltzing Matilda, we are introduced to a swag man sitting down by a billabong, which is a small pond formed when a lake changes its route. He's cooking in a billy, which is a little pot, when he sees a sheep come by called a jumbuck. He grabs the jumbuck and decides to steal it because he's hungry. He puts it in his tucker sack, which is a bag he can carry on his back. But that's a stolen sheep. It doesn't belong to him. And as we know, the Australian farmers rely on their sheep to make money so they can sell their wool to make other items. And so the Australian farmer was upset and called the police to get his jumbuck back from that swag man. The police officers chased the swag man, who decided to jump into the billabong. Now this is where the story gets a little bit silly, because after jumping into the billabong, he drowns. And it's said that his ghost still haunts that place. You can see the ghost here because you can see the branches through him. That's how you know he's a ghost. But that's not real. That's just the story of Waltzing Matilda. This book is called The Thornbirds. It is a novel, and it is about sheep shearers and living on a sheep shearing ranch in Australia. It's also about love and growing up and not getting what you want. But it also has a section at the beginning about what it was like in the 1800s at a sheep shearing ranch. So I'm going to read you a little section of it. A funny thing about this book is that I only ever read half of it because I don't like the last half of the book. So I don't know if you can tell, but the back half is clean and the front half up to that yellow marker is dirty. Because I read as far as I like the story. And then when the characters start to do stuff that I don't want, then I don't read it anymore. But today, I'm only going to read you the part about sheep shearing. At the beginning of May, the shearers arrived on Drogheda. Drogheda is the name of the ranch where all of the sheep are for the main character in this book. One of the characters was extraordinarily aware of how everything on Drogheda was done, from deploying the sheep to cracking a stock whip. She summoned Paddy, he's the main sheep shearer, to the big house some days before the shearers came. And without moving from her wing chair, she told him precisely what to do, down to the last detail. He was used to shearing in New Zealand, but he had been staggered by the size of the shed here on this huge ranch with its 26 stands. Now, after the interview with his sister, facts and figures warred inside his head. Not only would Drogheda sheep be shorn on Drogheda, but Bugella and Dibbin and Beal sheep as well. Now that means that smaller farms that were nearby that had sheep all brought their sheep to the big ranch, and they did community shearing. So one set of workers, the shearers, would come only in the May time, right at the beginning of summer, and they would shear not only the sheep for the big ranch, but the sheep for all of the farms nearby. So for a couple months, all the farms would bring all their sheep to one place, and the shearers would shear them. And this happened every summer. It meant a grueling amount of work for every soul in the place, male and female. Communal shearing was the custom, and the stations shared Drogheda's shearing facilities, and they would naturally pitch in to help. But the brunt of the incidental work inevitably fell on the shoulders of those who worked full-time at Drogheda. The shearers would bring their own cook with them and buy their food from the station store, but those vast amounts of food had to be found. The ramshackle barracks with kitchen and primitive bathroom attached had to be scoured, cleaned, and equipped with mattresses and blankets for the shearers. Not all stations were as generous as Drogheda was to its shearers, but Drogheda prided itself on its hospitality and its reputation as a good shed. For this was the one activity which Mary, which is the owner of Drogheda, participated. So she did not stint her purse, meaning she didn't hold any money back. She paid well so that the shearers would be kept well and feel good and have plenty of food while they worked for her. Not only was it one of the biggest sheds in New South Wales, but it required the very best men to be had. Over 300,000 sheep would be shorn there before the shearers loaded their swags into the contractor's old Ford truck and disappeared down the track to their next shed. Being a sheep shearer at the end of the 1800s in Australia was very hard work. Not all the station owners provided well for the shearers. Some of them didn't pay them well or give them the food or comforts that they needed for their stay during the shearing time. So the workers decided to strike. In 1891, they said, "We are not going to shear any more sheep until you pay us well so that we can eat and have a good living." During this strike, at a station called Dagworth Station, one man fired a pistol into the air and lit one of the sheds on fire. Police officers, 3 of them, chased him down, but rather than be caught, he decided to shoot himself. In 1895, an Australian poet named Banjo Patterson was staying at Dagworth Station and heard this story from the owner's son. He and the owner's daughter, Christina McPherson, worked together to make the poem and set it to music based on this story that Patterson had heard about the shearers' strike. The lyrics that he wrote and the tune that Christina McPherson played for him became the song Waltzing Matilda.